Part of the organization of the human body. Um, we talked about cavities in the past video, but all of these cavities and divisions of the body are going to be lined by membranes, and these membranes are really important. Membranes do a couple of things for us. Number one, they provide protection. Although a membrane's not like a rib cage, it's not going to really protect against a hard blow or something like that, but it does provide a little bit of protection. Number two, lubrication. So these membranes are going to contain cells which secrete most of the time mucus, and mucus lines all of our cavities and our membranes and kind of surrounds all of our organs so that they're protected. And then three is it provides division between organs and the cavities that they're in. So that even though my stomach is sitting right underneath my liver, these membranes provide a little bit of separation for them, and there'll be a little bit of fluid between those organs. So the membranes are going to be named for the cavities that they're in. And it's actually really complicated when you first look at it, and then once you start to learn the cavity names, you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about these membranes. There's a couple types of membranes. There are parietal membranes and there are visceral membranes. So if you remember from the previous video and the previous slides on this PowerPoint, viscera, are the organs of our body are called viscera. So any membrane that is lining or surrounding an organ is called a visceral membrane. Any membrane that lines a cavity is going to be a parietal membrane. So those two words are real important. Again, get to know the words, then the membranes will make sense. A serous membrane. Okay, all of these membranes that we're going to be doing right now are going to be serous membranes. There's also another type of membrane called cutaneous membranes, although we won't do that during this unit. A serous membrane lines the walls of the thoracic and abdominopelvic cavities and covers the organs in it. So remember, thoracic cavity is your chest, rib cage, abdominopelvic cavity would be around your pelvis and your abdomen. They secrete this stuff called serous fluid, which is basically, like I said before, it provides some lubrication and protection around the organs and the linings of each cavity. And it forms, so here we're going to get into the types of membranes. The first one are the visceral and parietal pleural membranes. Okay, remember that you have a pleural cavity on each side of your thoracic cavity where the lungs are. So the parietal pleural membrane is going to surround the lungs. Excuse me, pardon me, back up, that was a mistake. The visceral pleural membrane will be directly around the lungs, around each lung. And then the parietal pleural membrane will line the cavity that the lungs are sitting in. So here, that's just what I just said. Visceral pleural membrane covers the lungs, and then the parietal covers the compartments. Now, important thing to remember is that if I have a membrane covering the cavity and a membrane covering the organ, then there's going to be a little bit of space between there, although it's very, very little. That's going to be filled with fluid. And that's called the pleural cavity, the space between the visceral and the parietal pleural membranes. Number three, I have pericardial membranes. If you ever heard the word cardio, okay, cardio, you're running, you're getting your heart rate up. All right, well, pericardial membranes are going to surround the heart. There's actually three membranes that surround the heart. I have the visceral pericardium, or the epicardium, that covers the heart's surface. So that's directly on top of the heart. There is a cavity between these membranes. So when you're in class, if you're in class and we're talking about this, I'll draw some pictures for you. There is a parietal pericardium that basically lines the cavity, but then there's a third thicker layer on the outside of both of those that covers the parietal pericardium called the fibrous pericardium. Now, you guys probably know that the heart is kind of important. All this stuff is important, but that gives us a little bit extra layer of protection around the heart. So let me review the heart again. The visceral pericardium, another name for it is the epicardium, directly surrounds the heart. The parietal pericardium lines the cavity that the heart is in, and then the fibrous pericardium lines the outside of that cavity that gives us extra protection. Then last, we have the peritoneal membrane. Peritoneal membrane are going to be in the abdominal pelvic cavity. So parietal peritoneum lines the walls of the abdominal pelvic cavity, and the visceral peritoneum covers each organ. So if I said, what is the membrane that surrounds the stomach, you would say, well, that's the visceral peritoneum. Okay, visceral meaning organ, peritoneum is the membrane within the abdominal pelvic cavity. This is a confusing topic. It's kind of hard to grasp these membranes, but they are really important when we get to or when we're talking about the divisions and the separation of the body and the cavities within it.